Just sending us live, not the start. Just letting you guys know.
Like
He's
kind
saying
of
stop.
like,
He's saying don't say anything incriminating.
I mean, I don't have anything incriminating about me, but I've got plenty of stuff about Splice when he blacked out after the Pepsi factory or the Dr. Pepper factory.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't you bring that slander into this house.
I mean, I'll bring it into any house I feel like.
Not
Because,
this
you
one.
know, I mean,
We have the most interesting pre-show.
No, we just have a pre-show, and it can potentially be interesting. I wouldn't say it's the
Yep.
most. There are several that have been around far longer than ours. That who
All
knows?
right, I'm gonna be right back.
quick, he's gone. Let's take control.
I have control.
All
No,
right, now I
Mr.
can mute the tab now that I know that volume is working all right.
Indeed.
It's like when you're trying to do that sound check, but you're listening with that delay. It just makes you feel somewhat crazy.
So I've been playing far too much Ghost of Tsushima lately.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Is that an I'm sorry?
Why is that an I'm sorry?
I don't know. I'm asking. Is that an I'm sorry?
I mean, I've chosen to play it, so I don't understand the I'm sorry part.
Well,
Okay.
no. What was the other thing I saw? I saw you playing something else too, as well.
Power Wash Simulator?
Yeah, that's the one.
I've seen a lot of that.
Dude, do you realize how many hours I've got in Power Wash Simulator?
600?
Probably
Not quite
a
that
lot.
many. 245.
That's fair.
It's a lot of power washing. And they're coming up with an expansion or a pack in a little over a week.
So, are you rewatching things you've watched before? Or are you still
Yes.
trying to get 100%?
Oh no. I've watched everything multiple times at this point.
And who keeps getting it dirty?
Time, the inevitable passage of time,
All right.
or just the restart button.
You don't get to blame entropy for all your problems.
Just this one.
I feel like you can blame entropy for all your problems. Go ahead and do that. You have permission.
Well, sometimes I like to blame enthalpy, especially when things are on fire.
I can
It's a
blame
conspiracy made up by chemists just to obfuscate entropy.
I can blame entropy for this conversational problem, and I can even walk through a proof to do it.
Oh, and you boot up Power Wash Simulator.
That's what I do.
It's a good game for this type of thing.
This pyramid is not going to clean itself.
I mean, it might. You don't know his life.
It's had thousands of years to do so. If it would have done it. If it was going to, it would have done it by now.
All right. Well, I'm going to get us started. So,
Okay.
let us be quiet. When I was but a wee lad, I had a friend who understood how to use the internet better than I did. And he was able to get trailers of things from things like E3. His name was Doug, and he told me, "Hey, have you seen the trailer for Metroid Prime?" To which I said, "No, never even heard of it. What is it?" And so next time I was over his house, he showed it to me. And I was kind of excited because the idea that Metroid was coming back after a very long hiatus was very interesting, but I just wasn't sure about how Metroid's gameplay would transfer to 3 dimensions. This was the GameCube era, and the GameCube was not, it wasn't the early days of 3D anymore. We had seen some games not make the transfer to 3D that well. But after that, I ended up seeing a commercial that quieted my fears. This one for Metroid Prime. And it is one of the best examples of a game that's amazing in 2D and amazing in 3D. This is episode 31 of I Think We Overleveled. And we're going to be discussing making the jump from 2D to 3D. Some games do it well, some don't. How's everyone doing today?
Not on fire.
Clean out on fire.
Just moderately on fire.
Enthalpy boy on fire. Knew it. All right. So, Metroid Prime is, for me, one of the best examples of jumping to 3D. Just because...
Well, I feel like this is deeper into the episode discussion, but we can do it right now.
oh, yeah.
Just because this isn't just jumping into 3D. This is jumping into first person as well, which is a whole other discussion.
Oh, yeah.
But no, so yeah, for me, Super Metroid is one of my favorite games of all time. Like, I played it when it first came out on the SNES, beat it multiple times, absolutely love the game. And but I was late to the game when it came to getting a GameCube. I was just for whatever reason, I didn't really think too much about it, mainly because, I started college in 2000, which means that I was broke when it came out. But when I finally picked up my GameCube a few years later, I picked up 2 games. I picked up Wind Waker because I love Zelda, and 3 games: Wind Waker because I love Zelda, Smash Brothers, and Metroid Prime. And I remember putting it in and just being absolutely mind blown.
It just plays so much more fluidly than I would have expected, especially from Metroid gameplay, because as good as Super Metroid is, it is still a little bit of a slower pace than a lot of other games.
Well, not only that, it on a GameCube, because the GameCube controller is not optimized for 3D first person. Yes, it has that second joystick, but that second joystick is a glorified D-pad. And so you had to figure out a different way to control the aiming mechanic. And so they put in a button that locked you in place, and then the walking around joystick suddenly became your aiming joystick.
Which wasn't new. That had been around before.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is
it's a good translation, I think.
Yeah, it's an excellent translation. But that's what makes it, it plays better than it has any right to. Because again, the GameCube controller was not built for first person shooters.
Well, and it's kind of interesting as well, just because Metroid was one of the big Super Nintendo properties that didn't show up on the N64.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, they waited for its foray into 3D.
Speaking of, there is a fan project that they've put a trailer out going on right now that's basically Metroid 64. It was clearly made, AM64.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna pull that out.
As in another Metroid 64?
It's a play on that. It's an homage to that fan project.
Okay. Interesting.
But yeah, it was clearly, if you look at it, you can tell it was absolutely made in the Ocarina of Time engine.
Interesting.
And Origami Samus.
Indeed.
Yeah. Oh man, 64 with its origami graphics. Wow. No, this is actually really interesting.
Yeah. So this is a fan project that's going on. Who knows if it'll ever see the light of day, considering, it's Nintendo and they're very litigious when it comes to their properties.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I was blown away by Metroid Prime. When you think about Metroid being a Metroidvania and kind of run and gun in style of its play, you do really worry that going into that third dimension that it would make it really clunky and hard to control and it just wouldn't get that feeling right. But they focused so much on the exploration and that they were able to capitalize on puzzles, that exploration, and that feeling of dreary isolation.
Isolation is absolutely.
Yes. I mean that is one of the things that is really key about Metroid is that feeling of isolation, and Prime focused on that hard to really point out the fact that in a three-dimensional space you can do an even greater job of giving that isolated, alone feeling as you explore this hostile planet. And one of the things that a lot of things suffer as they go to 3D is it usually slows down the pace. But for a Metroid game that's primarily focused on exploration, puzzle solving, that actually works very well. And that really helped, go from that transition to 2D to 3D without ruining that core experience. And I think it did a great job at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, especially because this is a zero mission world where it really started picking up the pace of the Metroid games by getting it on some more fluid software or hardware. I mean,
Well, one of the things that I think really helped it was the way they handled the morph ball. Because the morph ball is a very, it's an interesting and kind of unusual mechanic. Because yes,
because no one else does it.
Right. But the reason it happened in the first place was it was a way for Samus to traverse while crouching. And bringing it into the 3D plane, they really had to kind of stick the landing, and they did. Like when you play it, you're like, okay, it feels like I'm in this weird marble. The sound effects they added to it really helped with it. It's just I feel like they did a great job with it. And pulling you out of that first person makes sense, because if you're in first person in the morph ball, you're either going to get a static camera that gets very boring, or you're going to get a nauseating experience.
Those videos that are from the perspective of the tire. No, it's just a very good translation of a game series that like I said, I was kind of skeptical when I first saw the trailer. Like I thought the trailer looked really cool, but I'm like, is this really going to work as a game?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I saw the first commercial, though, where we saw a little more actual gameplay, because it was sort of like the first intro scenario, going through the tunnel, but they would juxtapose it with what looked like an actress or something inside of a Samus suit running around. But it's like, okay, this actually could work.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Anyway, so I don't know. This is the game that I just thought the jump was one of the more difficult ones, and they executed well. What was another one? Like Kami's
Oh, I mean, like the one which I remember being like the biggest stark difference was Legend of Zelda. Going from like the Legend of Zelda and Link to the Past to Ocarina of Time, where suddenly you've got a camera that's got to go around, and you've got like annoying, sorry, like, hey, Link, this, that, and the other. But, when you looked at Zelda originally, both the original and, of course, the well-received Link to Time, it was always that like top-down kind of isometric, walk around, not quite straight head on, but with that slight tilt too, and kind of gave you that 3D vibe to it. But playing Ocarina of Time, it's like took some getting used to be quite honest, because it's like, oh, well, now I actually am in the world. Like I have to like decide where I'm going to be looking at here.
Well, we weren't used to having to actually pay attention to how a sword fight works. I mean, the closest we got to that with Zelda before was in Link to the Past. You had the knights who they just constantly are holding their sword in front of them, and so you have to attack them from the side. And like you'd attack them and it'd be a tink. And I remember the first time I played Link to the Past thinking, it's cool, it's so awesome, I'm actually sword fighting. But with Ocarina of Time, they really had to put in an actual sword fighting mechanic. You had your sword, you had your shield. How are you going to handle holding your shield and blocking and moving and weird cameras? Because if you're sword fighting, you don't want to have the camera go goofy like it often would in, say, Mario 64, which is a whole discussion in and of itself that I think we should definitely jump into after this, because that was
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't want to throw that one in just yet because I didn't know if that one was going to go where that one was going to come.
I feel like that one starts the discussion, but I want to finish talking about Zelda before we go into it.
And there's quite a bit to talk about with Zelda still.
Yeah.
I mean, totally. Because like Zelda was kind of like, it was Mario and it was Zelda, and like I wasn't into Metroid, so those were my two standard bearers. And Mega Man never really got there, so that was the third one for me, which is kind of disappointing. But to each of its own. But like Zelda was, and I think I can speak for a lot of people. A lot of people's first RPG type game where you had to go in and you had to quest, and it wasn't just platforming. You had to go in and you had to actually like solve puzzles. You had to save it. You weren't getting this done in one sitting in most cases. So it was one of those.
It introduced the save battery, didn't it?
Yeah, it did, as far as I know. But when you go from like that, from a slightly tilted top-down approach on a 2D angle to now your puzzles are all around you. And if you don't have the camera right, you could miss a crucial thing that you need. And yeah, it made it it added a layer of difficulty to it, but it also added a layer of immersion to it, because you're not just looking at the forest. Like you can swing the camera around. It's like more like you're in an interactive movie nowadays.
Well,
like this opening that we're looking at right now, like that was just blew my freaking mind at the time.
I mean, in that same vein, I mean, in previous Zelda games, yes, Link could get a bow, but Link was never really seen as a bowman, as an archer, until Ocarina of Time, because you are actively aiming, and solving puzzles that way. There's archery challenges, and suddenly, you have the way to something like a Link's crossbow challenge. It was paved just because Link is an archer, like he's a ranger. He's rather than just he's a swordsman who happens to have a bow.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like maybe original Link, I think was maybe more portrayed as like the every adventurer, like fighter man. Who's better at fighting than fighter man.
Well, I mean, his name is Link because he's the link between the player and the game.
Fair enough.
Like that. That's why Miyamoto named him that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yep,
it's good to know.
Wasn't that also there was a hello, by the way.
Hi,
Mithril.
Off topic, but wasn't there also like an initial early design where you were going to be like traveling across different worlds and Link was going to be like the link between them or something like that? I don't know.
That I'm not aware of.
No, I've heard that.
I mean, if you look at the Hyrulean timeline, that's basically what's going on right now.
I mean, there's a game called A Link Between Worlds, so
I don't know. With Zelda, it's interesting because of this camera. They actually invented the concept of Z targeting, so you're making sure you could face the target that you're attacking or just trying to focus on. Because I mean, they did learn from Mario 64 that camera can be a giant obstacle, and in a game like this where you have more active combat, that can't be, that has to be solved. That's a problem that absolutely has to be solved. And Z targeting, though, you mentioned the sword fighting, that created some new challenges that I don't know if you're familiar with Sequelitis at all, but he actually had a critique about how the sword fighting and the Z targeting actually slowed the pace down of the game significantly because now combat is a waiting game of
Mhm.
waiting for an opening. Whereas
True.
in the 2D ones, you could, snake around, hit them in the side, and it was a lot faster paced because of it. Which I think is a valid criticism. Is this game is much slower paced. It is an example where the jump from 2D to 3D did slow the pace down tremendously from its 2D
Nah,
counterpart.
he's
Will
100% wrong. I've seen this game beaten in 5 minutes.
ha 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 ha. We'll definitely be getting
I've seen Link to the
into.
Past beaten even faster than that.
We'll definitely get into the 3D slowing the pace.
But,
I'm sure
yeah.
later on.
But I mean, I will admit, it still keeps that Zelda feel to it, where you're a swordsman exploring the world of Hyrule, and you still slash, you still mow the lawn to earn money, as some people joke.
I will point out, though, it does, now that you've mentioned it, and I just made this connection, it did kind of make the bosses in Ocarina of Time feel very punch-outy.
Oh yeah, they're very much more of a puzzle to be solved than some of the older bosses were, which actually I kind of like. I kind of like how the 3D Zeldas, the bosses very much are a puzzle to be solved rather than you know, can you find the right spot to stand and spam the attack button? So I mean that's it is very different, but I kind of like it.
Right.
I did very much like Ocarina of Time.
I mean, it's the highest rated game on Metacritic, so
I mean, I don't think it quite deserves that praise,
And
but
we all know
it's a great
Metacritic's
game.
never been wrong before.
no, but it says
What?
something
Metacritic?
about
No.
no, but it says something about
It's not definitive, but it's a good bellwether.
Though,
Yeah.
I mean, at the same time, what's interesting is GameFAQs often has the face off between the best game of all time, and I find it interesting is it's the two games that did kind of make that jump to 3D in their respective RPG genres, and they were the two games that really did. It was the debate, like for me personally, whether to get a Nintendo 64 or a PlayStation 1. Of course, that's FF7. We'll probably talk about that later.
Yep, that was definitely on my list.
Yeah. So, full disclosure, I bought the PS1 because I chose FF7 over Ocarina of Time, a decision I did not regret because when I borrowed Ocarina of Time, it only took 3 days to really do everything in the game. FF7 much longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
but no, the other thing that the jump to 3D allowed for is it allowed for a different style of boss fight as well. Like all the first couple boss fights, there's like, they're okay. Like they're kind of there to just introduce you to, working in a 3D environment. Whereas the Forest Temple boss fight with Phantom Ganon and specifically spinning around trying to figure out which painting is the real one. And then if you realize you're looking at the wrong painting right as he's about to jump out, get out of first person mode and dodge because you're about to get electrified.
Phantom Ganon's the hardest boss in this game.
The Forest Temple also served another purpose to me, just because I remember playing, the 3 dungeons as child Link and thinking, okay, this is interesting, it's fun, it's fine. But when I got to the Forest Temple, I was like, oh, that was the tutorial. I'm in the real game now.
Oh, the Forest Temple's like the best dungeon in this entire game too. The Forest Temple's fantastic.
I loved the Spirit Temple myself, but
Well, in particular, the rotating of the room with the twisty
Yep.
hallway.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it was one of those things you
Everything is different.
you run through it and it's just all kind of goofy, and then you shoot the arrow and it straightens out, and you have that moment of everything is different now.
Yeah.
Like just something changed in the world.
and in a way you couldn't do in 2D.
Uh-huh.
Because it's not like this is the first game that Legend of Zelda has messed with 3 dimensions. I mean, they've had those puzzles before in Link to the Past, where you have to figure out where to fall down and stuff like that. And
Right.
Well,
Not-
I mean, we're in the Deku tree right now, and that's exactly what this, is highlighting, because this is another one where you have to fall down just like in that. But this one really shows like it's
And-
very clear they chose the Deku tree to be the first dungeon to really show this
Yeah.
new verticality.
Well, not just to show the new verticality, but to teach you how to use it, like how to think in it. It really is an excellent tutorial level.
yeah, it's
Where
kind of a
it teaches
different-
you how to play the game. It's like it kind of teaches you this is how you need to think to play this game.
yeah,
Because like you're thinking of like the Temple of Hera, right, in Link to the Past, where you have to figure out where to fall down. But in that one, it's
Tower, yeah.
distinct. Yeah, tower. My bad. It's distinct planes. It's not really falling per se. It's just here's an entrance from this plane to this plane. Because it's all even though you can view it as a tower, because I mean that's conceptually what we're told to think of it as. It could just be linked rooms.
there's definite abstraction.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas this one, it is concrete. You are falling. You're climbing up, and you jump down to break that spider web. Yeah.
Just think. Then there's all and this is one as well where they sit there and it's like, okay, well, how do we represent this thing in 2D that we want to do? And it's like, okay, well, we could do this, and and they come up with some creative stuff, but it's just a whole nother animal when suddenly it's like, no, now we just have to actually do it, which is partially, I think, the other reason why the game sort of slowed down a bit is because, well, what other choice do you have?
You have to fill the actual space now. Yeah.
Well, and you have a processor that's having to do a lot more than it used. Like the HD, this is the HD remake, so you don't see it as much. But
yeah,
drawing those polygons, all the different ways they had to cheat out polygons.
Oh yeah, everything on the 64 looked like origami, which you don't really see that in this remake.
No, well, especially because like little things like the fact that Zora from a long distance, they were always underwater, so you just see the bubbles until you got close, and Gorons would always be rolled up into a ball.
Yeah.
I mean, that raises another point of slowdown with moving into 3D, particularly early 3D, loading times.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because
Where-
in 2D, every scene that's happening is kind of confined, whereas in 3D, because you can see that the only thing that limits you is the draw distance,
Mm-hmm.
and so they have to worry about loading whatever's in that draw distance.
Yeah, sprite pop-in can be a lot quicker, a lot faster than a full 3D model pop-in when you have to be, calculating all the different polygons and everything of it. And then, which is why, famously, Metroid Prime has, the doors are secret loading screens. So if you try to go through too many doors too fast, the door will just not open. Because it has to take the time to load.
No,
And-
I
Birth
didn't
of
shoot it
narrow
right.
eye.
But the fact that it like the light goes down, so you hit it, and you could still move around. You're like, okay, it doesn't feel like a loading screen. It feels like
Yeah.
Just
just
like the door got jammed.
exactly.
Well, and then they have that. It's not immediately into another room. The door opens into a hallway that you have
Right.
to run through to another door, and that whole time it's loading the bigger room on the other side of the hallway.
And they
Yeah,
might give
it's
you
a-
like an enemy you need to scan in there to be,
Mhm. Yeah, it's a very clever use of the entire layout of the room to
Yeah.
like of the map and whatnot to help
Hi, Mom.
disguise the fact that it is loading
Well, and that, in my opinion, is one of the brilliant moves of, like, I don't know who did it first, but when it comes to dealing with loading screens for 3D games, is when they allow you to continue moving around. It doesn't feel like you're on a loading screen. It feels like your character is waiting for something to happen in
Yeah,
universe.
it,
I mean,
it
like I noticed it most in Jack 2, the second Jack and Daxter game, where there's like elevators and stuff, but you can move around, you can jump, you can do your spin kicks, and you're in a loading screen, but it doesn't feel like you're in a loading screen. It feels like you are Jack waiting on the elevator to get down.
Yeah, though I
And
mean,
these are all
it certainly pads the game out and does make it slower paced and longer, but it's still the way to hide it with, if you
Yeah.
have to load and spend that time anyways, yeah, do it through padding that way. They'd much prefer that than a spinning circle.
Well, I mean, slow is
I
faster than stopped.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I was gonna say it's like these are all games that did their loading screens really well. There's one game that the slowness of the load times has actively been a barrier to preventing me from finishing the game, and that's Final Fantasy IX.
Fair.
Because even on the ports of that game, like I have it on Switch, they still left in the forced downtime where every single random encounter you have like at least like 10 seconds of load time. And
Yeah.
it completely murders the pacing of what otherwise is a very fun and enjoyable game.
Yeah, a lot of turn-based RPGs have that issue where they're switching into the battle screen. It just takes
Yeah.
so long.
Except for the one exception, of course, would be Chrono Cross. That one was just strange I thought it was the normal load in time, but then in the new game plus, where you have the fast forward button, and sure enough, the battle loads faster, and you're like, wait, why is the battle intro so long, anyways? Then
Because it's an artsy game as well.
it definitely is that. That's for sure.
I mean, that's also not even getting into fact the increased length of animations that they then have in like, famously Knights of the Round.
I was gonna say, yeah, FF7 Knights of the Round.
Oh yeah. So
Especially
before
if
we
you,
leave,
what is it, where you get like the triple summon or whatever? You just,
Oh, dual cast?
yeah,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
boot
yeah.
up Knights of the Round, then you get up and make yourself a sandwich.
Yeah, the W summon. Oh yeah. Yeah. Though before we leave Zelda, just quickly say I even though I do love how the bosses are now more of a puzzle. The downside to that though is because it's more puzzle solving to fight the boss rather than execution. Is on a refight or if you've seen someone else fight the boss first, then the challenge and enjoyment of fighting the boss kind of goes away, and
Little
that's
bit.
to its detriment. But it's still good as long as you try it on your own the first time, and hopefully you forget how to fight it by the time you play the game again.
Well, that said, like it is more of a puzzle, but you still have to execute it well.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Yeah. Oh, I actually think the bosses in Twilight Princess would still be fun, even if you kind of have a pretty good idea of how to fight them.
Oh, those bosses are just epic. I remember every
Yeah.
single one. I was like, this is fun. This is funner than I expected it to be.
Because now I just suddenly got the desire to fight the Sky Temple boss dragon where you have
Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, Spider-Man your way up. Oh, so awesome.
Sometimes it's about execution, sometimes it's about puzzling, and sometimes it's just about spectacle, but you can make a great boss fight out of any or all of them.
Now, one thing I do need to say about Zelda and the move to 3D is I still do love 2D Zeldas, which is why I'm glad that they're still like devoting
Yeah.
resources to making them. I've been
Mhm.
playing, Echoes of Wisdom just came out lately, and I'm like, this is just fun. I am having a great time.
Oh yeah, I still love my 2D Zeldas. Like, that's actually one thing I very much appreciate is when a game series goes to 3D that they don't fully abandon 2D in the series.
Well, and
Because
that's definitely something from the N64 era where everything just felt like
Hmm.
that everything's going 3D. 3D is just the grown up way of gameplay now.
This is what games are now.
Yeah.
Well, which is
And
what
there's
made
a
games
reason.
which is what made games like Mischief Makers an outlier.
Well, yeah, and if I'm honest, in that era, some of the best games are the ones that said, "Yeah, we're sticking with 2D because we want to use the improved graphics to make really detailed sprites we couldn't before."
Hmm.
And I'm not gonna jump on this bandwagon just yet. And those are some of the best games in that era.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
the issue that, I mean, look, let's face it, the programmers were really excited.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
A new era of gaming, and they could do new things that they probably
Which
had only ever
is-
dreamed of.
Which is why it's so interesting and surprising that two of the earliest examples of a 3D console game in Ocarina of Time and Mario 64 still managed to hold up today better than most other games on the console, if I'm perfectly honest.
And a lot of that has to do with just the team making them. I mean, Miyamoto he was an absolute visionary.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's also the reason why a lot of like late Super Nintendo era games are still viewed as far more beloved, or especially in like art style, very much like held up as pinnacles of what of what they could possibly be to this day. Whereas like there's a certain charm to the N64 art style, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be making into like any museums or anything aside from like, or you know what I mean.
It's a stylistic thing. It's the same way that you add a haze to something to make it look like it's from the 80s. It's just this thing that you do that it represents the era.
Or like sepia tone makes it an old-timey photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, which game are you saying wouldn't make it to the?
Okay.
A lot of other games from the late N64.
I
from the
was just saying,
era.
in general, the N64 art style has a very dated feel, and there's still a lot of charm. What I'm saying is there's still a lot of charm to it.
Well, like for example,
I know the whole museum thing was a misspeaking, but
well, the thing is, for every Super Mario 64 you have 3 Superman 64s.
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, was that a problem?
Oh my gosh. I mean, when you're dealing with a game where your main character can fly and that's kind of his defining feature, you need to get the flight aspect to feel really, really, really good.
You mean it didn't feel good to be locked into flying through rings?
Or counterpoint, we could make him fly really slow and have a draw distance that would make horror games blush.
Yeah, Superman, Silent Hill.
I mean, speaking of draw distance in Silent Hill, the whole using your limitations to create something better.
Right. Well, and that's something that that's one of the reasons I think that those Super NES games at the end of the run are so beloved, is because, again, creativity thrives within bounds is one of my favorite sayings.
And it's a mastery of the tools.
Mm-hmm. And so because they have to figure out how to get around problems, part of it is just that means the creativity is already flowing, and they're thinking, okay, what else can we do with this?
Is there a game you can think of where you like you were talking about Silent Hill? Do you want to expound on that a little bit?
You mean me or?
Oh,
Mithra?
I was just saying because we mentioned the limitations, limitations of your creativity and the limitations of 3D. We were talking about how long it takes to load stuff and render, and rendering all the different polygons on screen and loading them is quite a wait for like a PlayStation 1 or a N64. And so what Silent Hill did famously was they filled everything with opaque fog
Yeah.
to the point where it was incredibly oppressive and very on top of you, but that ended up building into the horror element of the game, and it's kind of famous for that as people realized it was the fog when the remake came out, and the remake didn't have the fog by default, at least. Maybe they patched it in later, I forget. And people were just like, seeing just an empty town, yes, it's a different feeling, and there's a sense of dread with that, but it just like, when you can see everything around you and you know that there's not going to be something jumping you within the next 10 feet, it just doesn't feel nearly the same.
Well, yeah, the way they used the limitation to actually be part of the story, part of the feeling, like without it, it's just not the same.
Oh, totally.
So I kind of feel like we've been, we've mentioned the obvious one, but before we get to that, I think let's go historically. One of the first attempts at making a 3D platformer, and then when they saw its competition come out soon after, they realized their goose was cooked. This, of course, would be...
You're talking Bubsy?
Oh, yeah. Yep, Bubsy 3D. Because when they realized, okay, we got this new 3D stuff.
I forgot this existed.
Yeah, they're like,
so
okay.
did everyone else.
They were developing, trying to, jump the gun. Like, we love platformers, we love our game Bubsy. We're gonna make our 3D game and show the world how to do it. And once they saw their competition, they were like, oh, dang it, we messed up.
We have a problem.
I wouldn't say this was the first one. I mean, you can go back to Contra.
Well, okay, fair enough. But, initially they thought, okay, we have to have the camera move around, so they're just going to leave it behind them, and you're going to, walk around in this 3D space, and, it had tank controls, so, left and right, turned which way you were facing, so you're always running forward. I mean, some games actually do well with tank control, but it has to be the right type of game.
Yes.
Usually it has to be a horror game, like my favorite game that does tank controls actually, I know it might be a hot take that I like this game, but Parasite Eve 2. Parasite Eve 2 is often panned because they kind of abandoned the RPG style of the first one to go more capitalize on the popularity of games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil especially. But I actually really liked it, and yeah, tank control is kind of a difficult one. But Bubsy, yeah, this is their solution of how they'd implement it in the 3D world.
And it went great.
Oh goodness, yeah, it's terrible.
I mean, can't you see how great it went? I mean, don't you want to play this game?
Oh yeah, doesn't this game just look amazing, people?
Well, that's why Bubsy 17 is getting ready to come out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or wait, did this series not continue?
But what I love is the story behind it, because there was actually an interview done with the creators, and they're like, "Oh, we were making this game, and we felt really good about it, but then the Nintendo 64 came out, and it had its flagship platformer,
Yep.
Mario 64."
This is the game changer. Like this, I mean, first off, just this title screen. The title screen is just them kind of showing off, saying, okay, look what we can do. You can grab Mario's face, stretch it around, make him look ridiculous. You let go, you have these springy physics, and it's just, and it's kind of them, doing their mic drop and saying, okay, Sega, your move. And
I mean, it's fun in the best way, though. It absolutely is.
It really is.
And it gets you, doesn't it?
Well, and the thing that's interesting about it is you go to like a Toys R Us or a Walmart, and this is the game that they're demoing. And before you even get into the game, you're just captivated.
And you're playing.
Exactly. You're playing before you even hit start.
You're playing before you're even playing.
And
It's awesome.
then someone comes along and hits start, and you're like, "Hey, dude, I was watching that." He's like, "Play the game." He's like, "I was playing the game."
What you're saying is Mario 64 is a Bubsy 3D club.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yes,
the
that's that's exactly what he was saying.
that's the thing. The developers of Bubsy 3D played Mario 64, and they're like, "Oh no, we messed up.
We're gonna have to
We
get new
messed
jobs.
But I
Nintendo
mean,
got
like,
it
danger.
right."
But
Can't-
if you really think about it, Mario is the perfect. It is the perfect timeline of 2D to 3D and then beyond. Because if you just look at all of the games from Super Mario 1 to Super Mario Odyssey, and the latest Mario games that have come out, that it's just like you can just see the transgression and how they just seamlessly do it. Like, a lot of thought went into all of that and how each thing was how they were going to remain true to the previous game going forward.
Well, and the thing is, Mario has gone from 2D to 3D and back again. I mean, Mario Wonder came
Multiple
out.
times.
Yes. I mean, you talk about Mario Wonder, Paper Mario. It's literally 2D Mario in a 3D world.
Well, and that's one thing I love about Mario. They didn't fully abandon 2D,
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
and I think it's to its benefit.
Briefly,
To the
it felt
point
like they did
that-
briefly, and then New Super Mario Brothers came out, and it was like, okay, they remember us.
I don't remember if Odyssey broke this trend, but I remember for the longest time, the 2D Marios, like the new Super Mario Bros. Series, was actively outselling the 3D Marios in Galaxy and Galaxy 2. Which
I don't know.
shows, not that Galaxy or Galaxy 2 were selling badly by any means, but it was
No.
it was just one of those things of like, there was still clearly demand for 2D platformer, even in, after the age of, 3D has come and, killed 2D. It obviously didn't happen.
Well, and if I'm honest, I spent more time playing them than Mario Galaxy.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
In my case, why did I spend more
Yeah.
time? Well, if I'm honest, Mario Galaxy, even though it was kind of neat being able to have that circular gravity that you could run around the planet, like, I thought it was cool in concept, but it actually wasn't my favorite thing to actually play and enjoy. And playing the new Super Mario Bros. And new Super Mario Bros. U was just a really fun classic time that I enjoyed a lot.
See, I had the opposite experience, but that's why it's great that they both exist.
Yeah.
Like, I do love 2D Mario. One of the things that I didn't like is when they started putting in like point scores again, and I don't know, there were just some things like, because I loved, I mean, like, I don't mind there being scores, but it was like when they started displaying them prominently when you're choosing a level. Like, my favorite 2D Mario, honestly, my favorite Mario game still to this day is Super Mario World. I think there was just something utterly magical about it.
Oh,
Agreed.
And it was a very, very clean map screen. I don't like the map screens that say, okay, here's all of the different goals that you have to reach. I'm just like, I want to get in and I want to beat it. And maybe there's one way to beat it. Maybe there's two, which is, in Super Mario World, if it was a yellow map icon or a red one. But I loved the simplicity of it. And so when they started getting really complex, I was just like, okay, this is cool, but I'm actually less interested. It started making the map screen feel cluttered to me.
See, I don't feel either way about it. Like, I just enjoyed the experience of it all. But I can go back to like a Super Mario Brothers or the latest one and just absolutely just dig into that as well. Like, there's advantages to both. And the Mario franchise is definitely one that what is it? Did they know their roots? They didn't try. They didn't try to escape it or try to be something else. It's like we're doing this also, but don't worry, all you 2D fans. We're gonna bring it back to you.
I mean,
Well, and there's a part of me that wonders, how long that's gonna, because like a lot of the old guard at Nintendo are starting to age and retire and step away, and so it's just one of those things where it's like I wonder how long that's actually going to be the case. I
worry.
I hope that the new guard recognizes that and sticks with it.
Which I actually wonder if that's part of the reason why, just in this last week or two, Miyamoto had an interview where he talked about how they vet new hires and spend some time just training them on the culture and history of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I almost wonder if that's him be like, hey, you're worried about us old guard retiring, and here's what we're doing to try and instill those values into the new people.
Love that.
Well, especially for a company as old as Nintendo.
Well, that and Miyamoto even mentioned the whole purpose of the Nintendo Museum they opened in Japan. It's not to be a tourist destination, even though they will allow some tourism of it. The primary purpose is to educate their new hires and employees.
Love that.
What it means to be Nintendo.
Well, I mean, they have that break room where it's supposed to emulate the way it was back at early Nintendo headquarters, where they would take a break inside a specific room, and it's just them having fun.
So I hope that makes a difference, but it's always comes down to what the people choose to do. So we'll see.
But I mean, like, it's also knowing the entirety of your history, and for every Legend of Zelda, every Metroid, every Mario, there's been some misses, and there was one very big miss, if that I'm surprised nobody's brought up yet.
Bring it up.
Which was kind of like this whole like jump into here. You can have the best of both worlds. It's 2D, but it's 3D, and it was an entire system.
I
y'all.
had a feeling.
My eyes are already bleeding.
I never owned this. I there was a kid on the street who had all of the new stuff, and so he owned it. First of all, let's just get out of the way. Like, this was such a horribly designed product. Like, it was a virtual reality visor circa the late 90s as to what that looked like.
But it was so heavy that it required a stand.
Yeah, it was so heavy it required a stand, and the stand was not very big, so you were always hunching over to play it. And you had to, like, get your eyes in there, and, like, if you're like me and you wear glasses most of your life, like, it wasn't a fun experience to begin with. And then, I don't know, I guess maybe they looked at this and they said, well, we'll call it the Virtual Boy. People like Game Boy, and that's only got 2 colors at one point. But, like, it was, and you can see from on the screen, like, this is what they thought Cutting Edge was gonna be like.
Well, I have seen like a documentary talking about the history of the Virtual Boy and the company that came up with the technology, and Nintendo was impressed with it, but the problem is they designed it to not be a commercial product for your average consumer to be able to purchase, and so they had to start cutting and whittling down on what light they put through this mirror, because it's an oscillating mirror to do this, and to actually make it a viable product that the average consumer could possibly purchase, they had to make it red, just one red color. But the problem is once you've cut the technology to be at an affordable price, it's no longer seems like cutting edge technology anymore.
No, the thing is, I remember playing it at a Target and immediately thinking, wow, it really does look like it's coming at me. And also immediately thinking, this looks awful. And at that
Like it
moment,
was so bad. And like actually my mom freaked out a little bit when she realized I was playing it in a department store at one point because I had epilepsy as a kid, and it was a very serious thing. So it's one of those things where like, you know, like I can see where they were going with this, because I remember this was also around the time where like hackers was about, and you'd have people with like the virtual reality rigs, which basically was just an Apple Vision but clunkier taped to your head. Which I still can't believe they've got the Apple Vision as a thing, but that's
Everyone wants to be a part of the future before the future happens.
exactly.
True.
Like, I mean, like I could go on an entire side tangent of like it's hilarious to go back and see what sci-fi is, because it's a microcosm of that. Like, look at atomic sci-fi from the 50s, where everything was like, you know,
they thought we'd have
fishbowl.
flying cards by now. We've really let them down.
Oh,
I know,
big
right?
time.
There's like the 80s people who thought we'd have hoverboards by now.
And flying cars.
And flying cars.
And
You know what, Splice? You should get on those flying cars.
Yeah, I'm an experimentalist. We have to wait for the theoreticians to figure it out.
Well, I
the
mean,
funny
to
thing
be
is
to
that-
be to be fair, people can hardly drive in a 2D plane.
Well, they actually there was someone I did see they wanted the hoverboard so bad that they actually did make one. You had to be on their magnetic track with their magnetic hoverboard, but they did style it to look like the one from the movie, which I thought was fun.
I mean, like, and God bless them, like that's dedication, y'all. That is something for sure. But I mean, like this, and like I remember the ad campaign around this, and it was like
horrifying.
It needs your eyes.
like yeah, like the whole thing where it like ties you up and like forces the controller into your hands and then like sticks to your face like an alien face hugger.
They wanted to be accurate.
Yeah,
I mean
it let me know that I didn't want this product, and I never asked for it.
like it really does just like beg the question of who was this for?
Well, the answer is no one, and I
'Cause
will
it wasn't
say
cheap either.
no. I think it's a fun little novelty, and I think one of Nintendo's better strengths is they tend to abandon bad ideas that are obvious quicker than some companies, I think. Now, they'll still stick
Fair.
with other bad things, like they stuck with the cartridge way too long. But they try.
Yeah.
That said, I understand why they abandoned the cartridge, but I also miss it because again, load times.
Well, they've kind of gone back, but I mean,
A little
Well,
bit.
that's because
Flash memory.
the technology
Yeah.
got there now.
Mhm.
Flash technology, yeah. Now, the Virtual Boy I find interesting is they somehow, the fact that they were able to get any third-party games on this at all is amazing to me, and especially that the Persona team of all teams.
Well, I think
Atlas.
part. I think
Oh,
part of
Atlas
it is,
Atlas published a lot of not good games as well over their years. They're not flawless. They published the highlight games.
Well, you got to
Wait,
remember,
what?
this is a different era of game making.
Maybe it was just virtual highlight, but yeah.
Publish
making
or develop. Just publish, I bet.
Maybe it was just published.
I don't know.
Anyway, sorry.
The point is, it's a different era of game making where it was so much more difficult to make a game, and so the idea of trying to get onto the next trend, it's very exciting because every game you're coming out with is something that is breaking new ground in some way for your company. Because there were so many changes as opposed to now where it's more, it's more streamlined. It's more, people know what it takes to make a game. And you lose something with that. There some of that adventurism is lost. But at the same time, if we can make the adventurism comparison, less people are dying in the jungle from malaria. It's safer. But there's something lost with that safeness.
Mm-hmm.
So just to quickly interject, Hydlide, it was published by Sega in Japan, but North America Atlas published, because Atlas did do a lot of games that other companies like, we're not going to bring it to the States, and then Atlas jumped in, I'll bring it.
Okay. That makes sense. The part of their, you know, every developer and publisher and whatnot needs to go through their own hardships or what have you.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth moving into like talking about the JRPG genre moving
Okay.
into 3D, because it's a different aspect of 3D. It's not
Yeah.
really 3D gameplay, but it's 3D animation, 3D
Mhm.
design.
Yeah, because that was something I definitely wanted to bring up with FF7, because it's like,
Mm-hmm.
functionally, it's not really all that different.
It very much not. But I will say I am very, very like I have played Final Fantasy games from seven. Like I've played every Final Fantasy game at this point except 15, I believe. Every mainline Final Fantasy game. I haven't played 13 either. But I will. I have to say
You're missing nothing.
and that's what I've heard. I actually own both, and I'll eventually play them at some point. But it's just a matter of I yearn for the days of old school 2D Final Fantasy
Yeah.
and JRPGs. That was one of the things that I thought was really cool with the Suikoden series, because the first game in the Suikoden series came out on the PlayStation, but it used sprites. And they did some things with those sprites. Like I remember at one point, one of the characters pulls out a sword and holds it. And I was just like, this is a unique stance that I haven't seen anywhere else in the game. And it's just for this little cinematic moment. Because in addition to having higher processing capabilities, the PlayStation just had more storage capabilities. So they could have a whole lot more assets in there. And so having a few extra sprites for a brief little animation isn't a big deal on a system like that. But then you move into stuff like Final Fantasy VII, and you lose a lot of your fidelity. Like you get 3D and you get some interesting animations and changes and stuff, but you lose some of that actual fidelity of the character design.
You know, it's actually interesting as you bring up the storage difference, because that was the defining difference between the 64 and the PS1. Because a lot of people point out that the 64 had more graphics capabilities, like the processing capabilities, than the PS1.
Mm-hmm.
But I would argue it didn't matter because it didn't have the disk space to use it.
Right.
Which was interesting, because I actually do remember one time my parents saw me, they'd seen me playing Final Fantasy VII before, but then when I borrowed my friend's 64 to play Ocarina of Time, they saw me playing Ocarina of Time, and they actually gushed more about the graphics of Ocarina of Time over Final Fantasy VII, which to me, I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? They're like, oh, but it's so clear and whatnot. And I guess from that, they saw the processing of the origami looked sharper.
They saw
but
characters
it still-
with noses.
Yeah, but the thing is, in FF7, the characters were way more detailed, even if it was, at times a bit more pixelated looking.
I'm also gonna say, is this cutscene brain or
Right.
around the overworld or in battle? Because you have three very different
Yes.
looks.
Yeah, I just remember they saw me in Hyrule with the Ocarina of Time, and they thought it looked great. Whereas, the blockiness of this, I mean, at the same time, I guess you could say the character model looks a bit more distorted compared to Ocarina of Time, which, because I mean, look at Cloud's arms, where they go to a point at his elbow.
Looks like he's made out of Lego bricks.
He's got Popeye arms.
Yeah, he's got Popeye arms, whereas, Link didn't have that issue. But I still think things looked much better on FF7 in the PS1, because you could use that disk space to just have so many more details that are just,
But-
take up that hard drive space.
But the
It's-
thing
And
is,
also
it's
bullets
not
only
just
do 4 damage.
the graphics and the animation though are two different things, because like in the overworld of FF7, there really isn't a lot of high fidelity animation.
Oh yeah.
In Zelda, like you're running around Hyrule Town and there's people dancing and there's dogs running around and like all sorts of stuff is going on at the same time.
Well, and let's be honest, the overworld in FF7 often looks gorgeous, but it's pre-rendered.
Yes,
you know?
it's like you're running you're running a character around on a painting.
Yeah, and so like the painting looks great, the pre-rendered stuff looks amazing and sharp and crisp, whereas the actual, characters themselves look blocky and pixelated.
It's a consistency thing as well in terms of with like Zelda, the characters will always, Link always looks the same. He's always rendered basically the same, whether it's in a cutscene or you have full control or what have you. Overworld dungeon doesn't matter. In Final Fantasy VII, you sacrifice the consistency by having these multiple versions of the models in order to have more efficiency of what you're trying to do at any given time. You want to load a bunch of stuff in the overworld, will have these simplified, really extra chunky models. You want to have a little bit more limited, but more motion, movable parts and whatnot. Will have the battle scenes, which are a little more trimmed down, but have a lot more higher fidelity models themselves. And then you have the full pre-generated cutscenes for when you want to have a really big story moment that then looks almost movie quality for the time.
And that's a big reason why, like, I was like, what do you mean things look better here on in Zelda? Because, I mean, there's cutscenes in Ocarina of Time, but they look just the same as playing, which is like, oh, that doesn't look any special. Whereas, in FF7, you get to like the full-on cutscenes where it's like, holy cow, I didn't know computer graphics could look this good.
But you also get the consistency in Ocarina of Time. You don't feel like you're
It's-
stepping out of the game into something else. To watch a
it's-
movie, you're still playing the game.
I've always kind of thought though the inconsistency between the world where it's all painted and the blocky models is part of why FF7 has remained so culturally in the zeitgeist, because there's just not another game that looks like it. And
Because
I don't know-
even 8 and 9 did not look like 7 at all.
No.
Well,
Yeah.
because 7's the result of, if I remember correctly, I believe it was there was 2 separate teams and they were kind of like there was a lot of internal strife, and finally they sort of cut the baby in half to make it happen.
I don't
I'm
recall
resisting
that.
the urge to make so many puns about you saying strife about talking about FF7.
Well done,
Oh, gosh.
actually, in that one. Well done.
I do. What was
But
it?
yeah, I
was gonna
haven't
say
heard that
something and
story
lost it.
before.
Sorry.
Oh, it's also it's definitely worth watching the New Frame Plus series, the animation of Final Fantasy, to kind of get a view of this, because I can't remember if he just did the 7 one or he's getting ready to do the 7 one, but it really is interesting just watching the series evolve from game to game as they figure out how to use their resources and then move into to games to systems that are able to handle more than they were able to, because that is one of the things that Square is kind of notorious for, is pushing the limits of the systems that they're on, because they've become known for having these beautiful cutscenes and worlds and stuff, and so they kind of feel a drive, almost a necessity, to continue that, and so they are constantly trying to push the limits of what they have available.
Well, yeah, especially specifically the Final Fantasy Square side of the team.
Yes.
The side that's kind of willing to go back to roots and still do 2D is the Enix side with Dragon Quest. Yes, they make Dragon Quest 3Ds, but because they still made for 11, they wanted to have a DS version as well as the PlayStation 4 version, and so they made Dragon Quest XI, they made it twice, one in 2D mode and one in 3D mode. And then the remaster on the Switch of that lets you switch between the two modes if you want.
Hmm.
So yeah, I totally get how sometimes you want to play that classic 2D Final Fantasy, and you just have to play an old Final Fantasy game to get that. The closest you get is Bravely Default, allows you to feel the PS1 games again, but even still, that's still 3D. That's not the old 2D.
You also get stuff like Octopath Traveler, which is HD 2D.
Yes. Yeah, Octopath Traveler does fit in that too, as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the fun thing about that is that they use 3D rendering for the worlds, but then 2D rendering for the characters, like detailed 2D sprite art for the characters, which creates another very unique sort of look.
No, honestly, I feel like their inspiration for that art style, I feel like was more pulled from the Saga games, which I mean is also SquareSoft. So
right,
yeah,
it's all Square in the end.
Square's all the way down.
Square in the end. Which sounds like it's another podcast which we should be looking at making at some time in the future.
It's all Square in the end.
Yeah, why not?
It's pixels all the way down.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting concept at the very minimum, especially in the RPG space, because it technically doesn't ever really need to be 3D.
Yeah, because I mean, functionally, you're walking around on a 2D map, and you get into random battles where you input the same menus you did before.
Well, and then you do end up having evolutions into because Final Fantasy has been gradually moving away from turn-based combat, aiming for trying to pull in a broader action RPG audience. That started with I guess FF11, but really more so with FF12.
Well, yeah, because 11 did the MMO style. 12 is how do we change the MMO style to work in single player, which I actually think they did a really good job of, because I played 11, I didn't really like it that much. 12, I'm like, oh, this is a much better version of 11 that can be single player, even though I still kind of miss the old, turn-based battle.
Exactly. But after 12 you move into I didn't play for 13, so I don't know exactly how that works. 14's an M, but once you get to 16, it's just full on. I mean, 15, it's basically,
I mean, 15 also is not it's full on action RPG. Yeah.
16 is essentially a Devil May Cry clone.
Yeah. I mean, 15 was going that way too.
And so it's just, as they've moved into 3D, they've also moved into a lot of the 3D mainstays out of the turn-based system, which I miss.
Oh yeah.
Like, I would love for FF17 to be like a full-on throwback. The other thing is we keep, like FF7 is getting this huge trilogy of remakes with the first two games are out, and now there's one more to go. I would love to see some of the later games. I would love to see a demake.
I will admit the FF7 remake, I actually appreciated how they made a hybrid between the command system and and the newer active battle system. Because they kind of took 15's battle system to a degree where you're, attacking more action RPG style, but then you go into command mode to use like spells and stuff. I'm like, this honestly it felt really good.
You know what it felt like to me is more of a hyper realistic Kingdom Hearts control system.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, Kingdom Hearts was kind of based off of, Secret of Mana's battle system, and yeah, I really did appreciate how the FF7 remake kind of took that system but kept the commands as an option in there. And I thought it was really cool how when you pull up that command menu, it would go into bullet time where you could still see things moving, just traveling slowly. And it was a really cool effect. Yeah.
Well, and it still gives you a little bit of urgency. It's like you're not pausing the game. You have you have a certain amount of time to choose, but it's effectively a very long amount of time.
Yes. But yeah, no, I'm with you. Like, I bought 13, I bought 15. I originally wasn't planning to buy 15, but a friend eventually talked me into it. But I don't know, I just couldn't get it. I played both of them, but I didn't get terribly far in either.
But like,
13 was just hard to get into. 15, it had a good moment, but for the most part, it was just kind of a boring, big, empty world.
like I realize that I'm probably part of a minority that Looney, you may be in, but I loved 1 through 6's pixel remakes. I would love to see 7 through 16 pixel demakes.
You know, that'd be interesting.
I would absolutely love that because it's just a way to experience the story in a completely different way. And I'd love to see what their team could do with it. Never going to happen, but I would love to see it.
I actually have seen a fan-made FF7 pixel demake.
I've seen scenes of it. I haven't seen it all the way through, but I'd absolutely love to.
I have seen 7. I mean, it was a fan-made one. It actually looked pretty dang good.
Exactly. And so I'd love to see Square do it.
It was done in NES style, if I'm not mistaken. Like in
I think it
graphics.
was.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I've said before, I think SNES was the golden age of JRPGs. And I would just love to see those later games remade in that style, because then I would be a lot more likely to play all the way through them.
Why is that?
Part of it is with the 3D versions, they overcomplicate the mechanics as well. You know, and a lot of people love the very, very, very complicated mechanics. Some people love to spend time in menus. We've given Looney enough grief about how he played Mass Effect 1, where he would change ammos in between shots, and it just that's mind numbing to me. But he loved it, and I love that worked for you. But these hyper complex systems, I'm just like, I don't want to play the system. I want to play the story.
You know, it's interesting. I know you never got into Dragon Quest, but if you had Dragon Quest 11, would you think you'd play it 2D mode over 3D mode?
Probably.
If I'm honest, I did play it in 3D mode. I mean, granted, Dragon Quest, though, its battle system is still the turn-based battle system from forever. So, you know,
the other thing I've noticed,
there are functional differences, though.
Yeah, the other thing that I've noticed is in a lot of 3D games, if the animation is a little bit off, like it doesn't feel natural, like if they're, for example, if the character is moving at a pace that doesn't match their stride, like they're running, but it looks like their legs are moving faster than they're actually going, or vice versa, it is a very, very big turnoff for me. In a sprite-based game, in 2D JRPGs like that, it's a lot easier to forgive, you know, because it's just push the button, okay, they move a space. But
the pixel nature means it's already not accurate. Exactly. And so my brain is just in the, okay, here, this is whatever.
Okay,
but but if it looks like they're supposed to be running, and it's like, if them running feels like, to me, running in my dreams feels like, where, you know, you're like half awake and you're trying to move and your legs get tangled in your sheets, and so in your dream it feels like you just can't move right. That is a huge turnoff to me. And a lot of 3D RPGs, especially like the cartoony style ones, have that issue, and so I just have trouble getting into it.
So here's my question, though, with preferring the 2D. Do you like to have a strict grid of motion on the?
I prefer it, but I don't need it.
Because, like, yeah, I guess I'm asking, do you prefer like FF4 and 6 versus Chrono Trigger?
I wouldn't say I need a strict grid. No, because I loved Chrono Trigger. I loved Secret of Mana.
Okay.
But again, it depends on the art style. Like with Chrono Trigger, it works perfect for that 3D running around. But for example, I'm not necessarily a person who loves it where if they remaster or remake a game, and they take away that grid, that throws me off.
Yeah, FF4 remake at all on that one?
FF4 remake or
the
yeah.
DS remake.
Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, I have so many issues with that one.
Oh yeah.
Is this where I say that's the only version that I've played? Or am I banned from this discussion now forever?
No, it's just you. I'm
I
sorry.
think anyone's banned.
No, you just have my deepest sympathies, is all.
Fair enough.
Play
I mean,
the Pixel
It was
remake.
pretty. I liked the cutscenes they added, but they butchered a lot, and
Yeah.
especially when the development room makes it clear they had contempt for the original creators in the things they say.
One
Like,
of the things I also
usually
need
a developer's room makes you so happy.
Yes.
But when you see contempt, a remake, people making the remake having contempt for the original creators, turns you off.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very understandable.
One of the things I will say, Cecil's voice in that game, it's an amazing voice. It doesn't fit Cecil or Cecil or whatever it is. I normally say Cecil. I don't know why I just said Cecil.
Esau. I don't know.
Okay, I've always said Cecil. Yeah.
But
Cecile.
But it's just his voice is like, voice from the depths that he's just like, holy cow, and I understand he
got fully into Dark Knight, and then
but it just doesn't sound like him.
Yeah.
Where is she?
A little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's like this deep, resonating bass voice, and I'm just like, Cecil's not a soprano by any means, but my gosh, Anyway, that's off topic though.
Well, I mean, it kind of is.
Nope, it's on topic. The display's here on screen now.
Well, I'm just thinking that's one time a remake went from 2D to 3D, and at first I thought it was good, but by the time I finished it, I thought it was terrible. And I actually do think the lack of the grid on this remake did kind of do it dirty. Honestly.
Yeah, it's very strange how that works, but it's mostly a psychological thing. I don't know why it bothers me, but it bothers me.
Well, speaking of things that definitely should bother you.
That's never a good thing to hear, especially from Splice.
Should bother you.
Thought it was loaded a second ago. Let's talk about
Sonic into 3D.
Sonic's very weird move to 3D.
It was not as smooth as Mario's.
Well, and part of that, I think, is difficulty in execution. Sonic is a game, the fantasy of Sonic is going really fast. And what do the early 3D games do? Not well, go fast.
Exactly.
Well, there's another
even the modern 3D Sonic games, it's like they have illusion of speed, but they're not really nearly as fast as the 2D Sonic games.
Well, I mean, honestly, even 2D Sonic isn't quite as fast as you'd think it. A lot of it is just the perception of it than the actual.
Well, that's all that matters.
Yeah, than the actual movement. I mean, granted, his spin move is certainly faster than Mario's run, but his run actually isn't super fast. But
and some of the
his fantasy. You're right.
Some of the most exciting aspects of like speed in Sonic are the parts where you're actually not controlling him. Like when you run and you go into a tunnel and it like zips around and moves around and then and loops. You're not playing it, but you have just like it's only brief moments that the game actually takes control from you, but it's just brief enough that you still feel like, okay, I am controlling this. I am making him go fast. I'm going fast.
Well, and so like
it's brilliantly done.
One of the best examples of like a good Sonic 3D game, a lot of us will go to Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. where the Sonic and Shadow sections are very enjoyable, but if you look at the levels, they're basically just corridors that you move through.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, they're
And-
corridors, and they specifically have like rails to grind on, or lights or rings to zip on. You know.
Yeah. And the issue you have with it is because those are very fun sections, especially like City Escape, the escape from the truck where suddenly you switch to, and I had never seen this before, basically almost a second person view because you're the eyes are on the truck the entire time.
Oh, a Crash Bandicoot runner stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except you're coming towards you. Like, I don't know. At that speed, it was very impressive. But those styles of levels are very difficult to pull off because in order to get the feeling of speed, you have to create a lot of assets for people to go by. And by doing that, that takes up a lot of development time for something that's going to go very quickly, and no one's going to appreciate all the work that you put into making this level because they're going to run right by it. So it's not exactly a fulfilling thing for a game dev. At least I don't think it is.
Oh, okay. Since we have this on the screen, I just have to point out how awful the bubble shield looks.
What, you don't like the moving sprite that
The fact
that loses all idea of direction?
The fact that they, wanted to show it's 3D and what it'd look like if an actual bubble was completely encompassing you that glowed.
Orb.
Oh gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sonic
you don't
3D
feel-
Blast
You're not.
is just
You're not playing as Sonic. You're playing Marble Madness.
Playing
Yeah.
Orb 3D.
yeah.
Actually, no. This does look
goodness.
very much like
It
a new Marble Madness game.
It kind of hurts my eyes to a degree.
Well, and this feels to me like Sonic 3D Blast to me feels like someone at the Sega team said, "Man, Mario RPG was a lot of fun. We can do that. Meanwhile, we're going to build this bonus level here where you can't really see ahead of you at all. Because we want to pretend this is a 3D game." And it's not going well.
Yeah, I did not play much of this game at all. I played it for
I
probably
owned it on the
15
Sega Genesis.
I played it for probably 15 minutes and said, "Yeah, no thanks."
What? You don't think this is going well?
Now this is blast processing.
It is indeed. Like,
I mean,
it's not mode 7, but whatever effect they have going on in the background of like the earth that's supposed to be rotating underneath you, but it actually looks like it's just like melting down.
Look, all I know is Sonic got a Chaos Emerald.
That's
All we
that
need to know.
matters.
But no, in all seriousness though, because yeah, the best Sonic 3D games, they lean into the illusion of speed.
Mm-hmm.
Although, you know what, I didn't play. What's the most recent one? I forget its name. The open world
Frontier?
one. Frontier.
Frontiers, yeah.
My sister loves it because they actually, from her description of it, again, I haven't played it, so I'm trusting my sister here.
Wait, did that just barely come out, or?
Oh no,
No,
that came out
that came
months
out-
ago.
That came out
That
years
came
ago.
out. Yeah, that came out a couple
Oh.
years ago.
Excuse me?
Yes.
I vaguely
mean,
remember
Forces?
this coming out fairly like this year
Or
because
are
it
you
was
talking
like
about Sonic Forces?
No, Frontier.
no, Forces was years ago. Forces
Sonic
came
Frontier
out like
came out
similar
in
in
2022.
Mania.
November 8th, 2022.
Are you sure that wasn't like a weird like early access or something?
No,
thing?
that's
No.
the release date.
That's when it came out.
Really?
Yes,
Wow,
it's
okay.
been out for almost 2 years.
I guess I remember the announcement, but never actually realized
I-
it came out.
Welcome to being old.
I swear I was in this house, which would have put it at least in 23, but I guess I was wrong.
Welcome to being old.
Do not
'Cause
know
I
what to
remember
tell
all the
you.
videos about people saying it was just an Unreal Store asset flip with a Sonic skin.
See, my sister really liked it. Now, my understanding is it needed some, like, it has, depending upon what system you were on, some of them did better than others, but it's an open world game that for most characters would feel kind of empty, I was told, but it's actually kind of a by design thing because Sonic moves so fast in this open world that it helps lend to the idea of how fast he is.
So it doesn't need to be full. It can be empty because you're just going to be running through it so fast.
Yeah, and so the whole idea there, and this is what she liked, was she felt Sonic. She was going super fast at all times. And there are certain segments where, you're using the jump dash and stuff to get from platform to platform, but it felt, she said she felt like it was a high octane thing, which is the Sonic fantasy you're trying to fulfill. I mean, we've been discussing here with Baggins playing Ghost of Tsushima, where it's all about fulfilling the fantasy of what is this game supposed to make you feel. And we talk about Batman Arkham Asylum, you feel like Batman. Ghost of Tsushima, you feel like a samurai. And if you can execute on your main concept, people will like it. The reason I liked Sonic Adventure 2 Sonic and Shadow Levels, because that was the game I mentally signed up for. Why did I hate the Robotnik and Tails levels and absolutely wanted to murder myself during the Knuckles? Wow, look, here he is. The Knuckles and Rouge levels. It's because this isn't what I signed up for.
You didn't sign up for 3D hide and seek?
No. It's like, let's
so
play hot and cold.
I didn't mind the Tails and Robotnik levels, but yeah, even though the Lizzie actually, I'm trying to remember, did she enjoy those levels or not? But I didn't care for the Knuckles levels.
And it's one of those things where I think there's a universe that exists where that type of gameplay could be fun. It's just clear which levels got all the budget, and it's like, if we're gonna put all the budget towards the Sonic and Shadow levels, why not just ditch these other 4 characters I don't really care too much about, and we just make more of those.
And that's what they ended up doing in other games?
Yeah. Well, it's just, why make your job harder is my question.
Why make your job easier? Don't you like a challenge, Splice?
No.
Because if you can try to do more, you can claim that you have a more epic sense of scale.
It builds character.
You can put on the box that you have 6 playable characters instead of just 2.
Yeah. Now, Sonic 3D Blast, on the other hand, this is just a fever dream. And I can't believe this was made for 2 different systems.
Game of the year every year. That's what I'm saying.
It's just, I get motion sick just watching it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think
I was gonna
change the topic just to change.
We can change the video if you want to just
someone give a different
throw
game.
something else on. So
here, we'll improve things.
I was gonna say, is Earthworm Jim an improvement? Oh, Virtual Boy. Oh no.
You're a monster.
Going back to 3D platforming, or I guess I don't know who put it in Earthworm Jim to talk about it.
I put an Earthworm to talk about it.
Go for it.
So,
if you
played the original ones, the first 2, they were fun. Run and guns. The third one, I will admit, I did play it a bit. I did enjoy it. It was a fun game. Rockstar. I don't think I quite realized that, but it's. Even though it was fun, it was pretty janky. Like, I'll be honest. It certainly did not have the smoothness or the platforming of the original. Well, I mean, they tried to make platforming a big thing in this game, but oh goodness, this game is I don't know. It's a bit of a fever dream. I mean, Earthworm Jim in itself is a fever dream, but making it in 3D. I mean, I don't want to call it a bad game, but it's certainly there's a reason why it's the last in the series. Oh, the battle. Okay, yeah, I guess I forgot the plot. It literally is a fever dream, but I don't know. It had some interesting moments. You know how in Mario Sunshine, there's the you could get on the you go surfing on the Inklings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Inkling's not the right word.
Uh, bloopers.
Bloopers.
Bloopers. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, this one you did the same thing at times, but it was called pork boarding. It was surfing on a pig, which was actually kind of funny. This game they were going more for humor than anything else, which is pretty common for Earthworm Jim.
It's Earthworm Jim.
But the fact that trying to translate a run and gun, where in a 2D plane, it's really easy to aim your target at what you're shooting at. Like in a Mega Man. Well, Mega Man. That's another one that had a similar trying to take a run and gun, put it into 3D, and then suddenly things just don't work that well because in a game that's supposed to be more fast action platforming shooting based, now to take the time to aim your gun at your target, it just slows the pace down that it doesn't even feel remotely like the same game at all. And Earthworm Jim 3D definitely suffered greatly from that. But I mean, I will admit, I did enjoy it, but it also was very hard. I never could beat Earthworm Jim 3D. There was way too many things that could kill you. But it certainly was a unique experience.
Ah, yes, Mega Man Legends in 3D.
Mega Man Legends always struck me as interesting because it just had a very different look from every other 3D game. Like I'm not sure what it was they're doing with their.
What system was this on?
Originally, I thought it was on the
PlayStation, wasn't it?
PlayStation.
64 and PS1. It was on both.
Because I was gonna say this looks a little bit more like certain early GameCube games than.
No, PS1 and 64.
But I don't know what it is they're doing, but their polygons just feel different somehow. Like they have like a softer edge.
Yeah, they do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure what it is they did different.
I mean, in one degree, it you could say the graphics do look a little better than like FF7. Just because its polygons do have a more cohesive feel to, Cloud's elbows coming into a point.
You know what I think it is as I'm looking at it? I think it's because they're drawing 2D elements onto the polygons. It gives it an almost cartoonish feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a good fit for Mega Man, actually.
Oh, especially Legends, where it just the whole thing feels like Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah.
I did eventually get access. I did get a copy of Mega Man Legends to play, and I don't know. I had a hard time really getting into it. Like, I thought I'd love this game a lot, and I tried to get into it, but I just didn't.
Did Z targeting, essentially.
Yeah.
You lock onto opponents, start launching stuff. I really enjoyed it myself. Although that was Mega Man 64. So technically a different game.
But, though, in Legends, they weren't trying to go the full-on run and gun. But I think in, what was it, X7? Yeah, I want to say X7 is when they tried to make a 3D run and gun of Mega Man X, and that was not received well at all.
Yeah, Legends I remember was more I watched someone play it, I didn't play it myself. It seems more almost more Zelda like an Ocarina of Time type like action adventure,
Yeah.
but
Well,
you're Mega Man
Yes.
or a version of Mega Man.
yeah. Well, but the thing
Yeah.
I don't know. I just really liked the world they built. It's unique. It's weird. It's got this. It's high tech, yet we're driving a ship with a regular steering wheel. I don't know. I really liked it. But the thing that's just interesting about it is, like you said, it's not a running gun anymore. Well, because it can't be, because you couldn't do a running gun on this level of technology. We talked about how Sonic ran into issues because you can't give the illusion of speed when you're dealing with
what
this
is that?
many polygons. You just don't have the processing power. And so you got to design your game to fit what can happen. And I think that's one of the reasons Metroid didn't make the jump on the 64. I
Red
just think it wouldn't
Run
have
and
worked.
Gun in 3D, and we might not have time for this, but I saw a review of this game, MDK, and I'm like, this is probably the closest that you get to like trying to be a true run and gun in like on like PlayStation 1. And it's not great. Like there's
Wow.
different elements of it. So you have like a bombing section, it looks like, but then you go into a
Why does that
running
building
section.
look like it was bleeding?
I don't know. MDK is Earthworm Jim is weird. MDK is weird in similar but different ways. I
Never heard
don't
of
even
this.
know how to explain it. I only heard of it because a channel that does retro game reviews did a review of it, and I'm like, oh, that certainly is one of the games that exists. Oh yeah, no, here. Or it's like,
What was this for?
I think it was for PlayStation 1 and PC.
Now that's Baggins was talking about where the animation of them running doesn't seem to match the motion, and this one has that in spades. I can see.
Yeah. It's I saw the gameplay and I remembered it as we were talking about stuff. And I'm just like, you want to talk about transition to 3D and trying to figure out what to do with this.
I am
like
impressed by
space.
how this is a good zoom for this era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually like on a technical level, I'm
This PS1 was 97 is when it came out, so would have been, I guess, late PS1 if it was.
Well, no. 97's early PS1.
Yeah,
that's early?
PS2
Okay.
PS2 didn't come out until like 01.
Well, 97's the year I got a PlayStation. So
Okay. All these things dates
FF7
blend
was
together
the
in my
big new
mind as
game.
I'm like, okay, but yeah.
no, like don't get me wrong, this game doesn't look good, but the things they're doing on a technical level, I'm actually quite impressed by.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the PlayStation came out in October of 2000, so or PlayStation 2. So this would have still been mid to early PS1.
Okay, yeah.
I learned
So,
something
yeah.
today.
Just
So,
weird random game.
So you know what this actually makes me think of? It's not one that I can speak on really well. If we had Brett in, then it would be a good one.
What a good
But-
tornado effect.
But is Descent.
Oh,
You know, where you're
one sec,
where
let
you're
me see if I
taking
can-
the basic first person shooter and you pulling it into a full 3D environment where you're actually moving on a 3-dimensional axis.
Yeah. Now, it's funny if we did have a PC Master Race in here, they'd be talking about like, oh, you console people saying, oh, it came into 3D. Well, PC had been doing 3D for a much longer time than that, which is true.
Mhm.
It's true because Descent's even older than that. And
95.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
But like, you know, that's one where like it's a very different look at a genre, because like you're still in a first person shooter mode, but you're in a ship moving in a 3-dimensional plane rather than jumping up onto platforms and stuff like that. You are literally flying in 3 dimensions.
Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is, with a lot of 3D games, they did the movement, some might say wrong, at first, because what you do in Descent in order to get max velocity is that you're capped in your forward speed, your horizontals, like your forward and back speed, your left and right speed, and your up and down speed. You're capped individually with them, but they together do not, like, it's not a perfect sphere of like max motion. It has weird angles based on combining those things. So if you are moving both up, left or right, and forward at the same time, that's your real max speed. And so a lot of that gameplay, especially once you get into multiplayer, is strafing around while rotating and doing these things at max speed to fill the arena with lasers and bullets and missiles and what have you, while avoiding everything else that your enemies are throwing at you. And it creates a lot of interesting things, but what Descent 1 did is that most of the levels were very tight corridors like this. You were in like planetary mines and whatnot. Later games, Descent 2 had some more open spaces and frankly, just, I'm not going to go into my rant on Descent 2's level design because I think it's awful. But Descent 3 had far more open spaces. You were on planetary surfaces a lot more, which gave a lot more room to maneuver. And they also gave the AI a lot. The AI was also a lot better, and so it used the room to maneuver and dodged your shots a lot as well.
Watching this video, it's making me realize just how much of a dinosaur the computer I had was, because it did not move nearly this fast when I played.
Oh, if you play Descent on modern computers, you actually need like Descent specific emulation software, because otherwise, if you try to run it in a DOS box, the motion and frame rate is not hard capped. It was capped by your computer's processing.
Oh gosh.
Well,
so you will be vibrating up and down constantly.
Yeah. You know, if we do want to talk about PC, you know, a little bit, if we talk about the game that I feel like did take the PC from 2D to 3D, it'd be Quake.
A little bit.
Granted, this long play is from on the 64, but
I was about to say, did you not notice the big N64?
Yeah,
logo?
well, that's what was
you're doing
that's
great.
videos I could find. But the point is
Still Quake.
This is, I mean, it's still Quake. But before Quake, you know, there was Doom, which, you know, looked 3D, but it was just emulated 3D. You know, like there was no.
It is 3D.
I think this is the first game I ever played on a LAN.
It's all that matters.
Doom, like you had a 3D view, but as far as where you were on the map and how you know, attacked enemies, there wasn't like aiming up and down.
No, there wasn't, but it was 3D because there are 3D puzzles where you have to jump over chasms and stuff, and with no jump button.
Okay.
And so
Doom's good old 2.5D.
Yeah, it's a weird category all unto itself, because like you have Kirby that's 2.5D, but that's just like, okay, that's just a 2D game that's masquerading as a 3D game. Doom is we're gonna cheat our way to do some 3D things.
Yeah, but Quake was the first truly 3D where you aim up and down to attack enemies. And so I kind of feel like this was, in a lot of ways, one of the first truly 3D games out there.
Was Quake before or after Hexen? I want to say it was after.
I remember getting definitely sick playing Descent.
Oh yeah, no, Descent is super motion sickness. Like watching a video of playing Descent is even worse than playing it, because while playing it, you at least have a sense of where your motion is going to take you because you're pressing the keys or using the joystick. When watching it, you are just along for the ride.
It's like being in a car with an erratic driver.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and just because you're floating everywhere in descent, there's just no weight to the movement.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're on skis the entire time.
Yeah.
I mean, no, Quake's definitely the true 3D successor to Doom.
Oh yeah. One more 3D game that I threw in here a while ago when we were talking about 3D platformers, and 3D platformers went in multiple different directions that were successful. You have like the very fast-paced like Mario platformer. You have the really 3D action adventure with some platforming elements like Zelda. And then you have a full-on like slow puzzle platformer like Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider feels a lot more like almost the 3D successor to like the 2D Prince of Persia games in terms of how it very strictly uses its grid system, the types of jumps you make, the ways that you fall and climb and all of that matter immensely in that game. And it manages to make a very fun platformer, but at the same time being very different from what like Mario was trying to do.
Very much so. All right.
You know,
We've been going
You were-
on for a while. I think we need to wrap
Mhm.
it up.
Yeah,
You
I'm just
were-
throwing those in at bullet points.
I want to double check on something. You said that Quake was kind of the original 3D. Now, didn't Rise of the Triad have 3D aiming and stuff like that as well? Because I
Yes,
remember,
it did.
ooh,
I remember that.
I remember the
I
concept
remember
of
that.
being able to write my name on the wall in bullet holes.
Yes. Yes, I do remember Rise of the Triad. I was no good at it, but I do remember it.
I don't remember
I
it.
played it.
trying to remember, it was so long ago.
Well, Rise of the Triad came out in '95 and Quake was '96. I'm just
then.
trying to remember if Rise of the Triad qualifies.
It probably, if you were able to write your name, I can't remember. It was so long ago when I played It was at my friend's house when I played
Mhm.
Rise of the Triad.
Yeah,
My computer definitely could not play it.
uh-huh.
But yeah, okay. So we need to wrap it up. I did want to say, like, I did mention earlier how I feel like a lot of the games that stuck with 2D in this era when things were transitioning were some of the best ones.
Mhm.
Like, I love how the Alundra 1 kept, a 2D Zelda style, and I thought it was like the best Zelda game of that era by a long shot. But then Alundra 2, they tried to make it 3D after the success of Ocarina of Time, and it just wasn't as good. It just really wasn't.
Yeah. Castlevania Symphony of the Night,
Oh my
legendary
God.
2D platformer game on the PlayStation,
And
then they went 3D
64.
in 64, and it was not anywhere near as good.
Oh my gosh. Castlevania 64. That's a really good one to bring up for this. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because what'll happen is they'll transition from 2D to 3D and stumble with the first 3D, and then they'll
Mhm.
figure stuff. A lot of times they'll figure stuff out, and then the next one will be a lot better.
It's funny you mentioned Prince of Persia earlier. I actually do think Sands of Time on the PS2 was a great transition.
Sands of Time is a phenomenal
Sands of Time was a
game.
fantastic
But
game.
the thing is that that one is just like Metroid, where they didn't go immediately. They waited till the technology got better.
It stood on the shoulders of giants and
Always
really
the best
capitalized on
strategy.
that.
But yeah,
Yeah.
because Prince of Persia: Sands of Time was PS2,
Yeah.
so it was kind of deep into the 3D.
Oh yeah. Well, same thing with Metroid Prime, bringing it full circle. They waited.
Yeah.
They waited until it was ready, and it was a good decision to do so.
Absolutely. Oh, I loved that game. I've beaten that game so many times.
Yeah, I love Sands of Time. I hate Warrior Within with a
Yes.
passion.
Uh-huh.
I love Sands of Time.
Now
All
I
right,
remember
incident-
one year for 4 in February I did all three of those the Sands of Time trilogy, and then like the new one that they called Prince of Persia where he has the claw thing.
I tried to do that, and that's when I got so ticked off at Warrior Within.
Hmm.
And it ruined my Foreign Feb experience that year.
All right. So, everyone, this has been a good conversation. Kamizite, would you like to promote anything?
Right. As a matter of fact, yes, I would. Hey, everyone, it's me, your pal Kami. And like I have been, I would like to promote Entangled Enemies, which my partner, Karina J, is in a contest. The contest ends at the end of this month. This is her entry. She is writing a short story in fantasy called Entangled Enemies. I have, in the self-promotion portion of the Splice stream, put the link in there. Please go check it out. Give her a subscribe. Give her a like. It's on Tapas. There's other things on Tapas, but make sure you go check out her thing first. And if you do so, for every like, every comment, and every subscribe, Splice will eat one fully cooked black bean.
Okay, it's a very odd thing. Lunasar.
I can make that happen.
Yeah, I figured you could.
That's so oddly specific and non-threatening.
It feels like a threat at the same time, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like one fully cooked black bean is like, well, I mean, man, I made chili and bumblebee stew with black beans in it. We ate a lot recently, you know. It's not a big deal.
That doesn't necessarily mean he's talking about the like black beans as in like the type of bean. It's just a bean that is black for some reason.
Oh,
That's open to interpretation. My superpower is I can make something that's not threatening sound super threatening.
it's a lima bean that's burned so bad that it's black.
That is a possibility here.
Or soaked in ink.
Or soaked in ink.
Ew.
All right, Mithril.
Today I'm going to promote youtube.com/Tarvold's Quest. Video game music trivia. Has had on a lot of different people from live streamers to music remixers and whatnot. Has a fun video game music trivia show. It's great. I just discovered them recently. Check it out.
Are they Linux gamers to be named Tarvold?
I don't know. Tarvould.
Oh, okay. It's spelled different.
That's how they spell it. But yeah, Tarvold's Quest, video game music trivia.
Interesting.
Baggins. The Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is a wonderful podcast with three wonderful hosts, two of whom are on this show, myself and Splice. If you're a fan of Brandon Sanderson, we talk about his stuff every other week. We record on Mondays, every other Monday, starting at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time. You should definitely check us out. That's at youtube.com/Cosmere Studies, or you can listen to our audio recordings on pretty much any audio podcast app. Right now, we are in heavy spoiler territory as we're reading some of the unpublished preview chapters for the upcoming 5th book in the Stormlight Archive, Wind and Truth. So definitely check that out.
All right, and you can, of course, find me, twitch.tv/splicestream. We are going head deep into XCOM right now, so if you like XCOM, come check us out.
If you don't
I
like
will-
XCOM.
Oh,
Definitely, it's worth checking out. He does good work.
yep. And I'll promote Lizzie's stream as always. So
Did you skip Lunasar?
I
yeah,
did.
you did.
You know what else?